Here's the story of Finland and its debt to the USA. Finland faced a really tough time in World War II. It was a small country. It had a long border with the Soviet Union, a massive power. So Finland's position was always tricky. Things got bad even before the main part of WWII. In 1939, the Soviet Union attacked Finland. This started what people call the Winter War. Finland fought hard. It was a small army, but they were good fighters. They knew their land. They had what Finns call sisu. It means grit, courage, and never giving up. But the Soviets had many more soldiers. They had more tanks and planes. Finland had to sign a peace treaty in 1940. It lost some land. This was a hard loss for the country. Many people had to leave their homes. They moved to other parts of Finland. But the war wasn't over for Finland. In 1941, Germany attacked the Soviet Union. Finland saw a chance. It wanted to get its lost land back. So, Finland joined Germany in fighting the Soviet Union. And this was the continuation war. It lasted until 1944. Finland's goals were different from Germany's. Finland just wanted its old borders back. It wasn't really fighting for Nazi Germany's bigger plans. This made Finland's role in the war unique. It was fighting alongside Germany, but it never formally joined the Axis powers. It never signed the Tripartite Pact. This was an important difference. Finland was fighting its own war. It was a war of survival for them. The fighting was terrible. Many Finns died. The country spent all its money on the war. Cities were bombed. The economy was a mess. By 1944, the Soviets pushed back hard. They launched a big offensive. Finland had to seek peace again. It signed another armistice with the Soviet Union. This one was even tougher. Finland had to give up more land. It also had to pay huge war reparations to the Soviet Union. These were not small payments. They were a massive burden for a small, poor country. The Soviets demanded goods and materials. Finland had to produce these. It took many years. And then things got even stranger. As part of the peace deal with the Soviets, Finland also had to get rid of German troops on its soil. These had been its allies just weeks before, so Finland had to fight Germany. This was called the Lapland War. It happened in the north of Finland. German troops used a scorched earth tactic as they retreated. They burned villages. They destroyed infrastructure. This made the Lapland region a wasteland. So, Finland fought 3 different wars in just a few years. It fought the Soviet Union twice. It fought Germany once. It was a devastating period. The country was in ruins. Its homes were destroyed. Its farms were ruined. Its people were tired and hungry. There was little money. There was little food. The industry was geared for war. It wasn't ready to rebuild. Many people were displaced. Soldiers were coming home to nothing. This was the situation for Finland right after WWII ended. It was a nation struggling to survive. It needed help from outside. It needed food. It needed materials. It needed loans to get back on its feet. This desperate need is where the story of the American debt comes in. Finland needed to rebuild. It needed to feed its people. It needed to restore some sense of normal life. This was the background. This was the deep hole Finland found itself in. Its very existence was at stake. The burden was immense. Its future was uncertain. And it was all happening next to the powerful Soviet Union, which was now a superpower. Finland had to walk a very fine line. It had to be careful, it had to be smart, and it had to find a way to rebuild, no matter how hard it seemed. The country was exhausted, but the people still had that Finnish sisu. They needed it now more than ever. So after the wars, Finland was in bad shape. Really bad. The country needed everything. It needed food for its people. It needed supplies to rebuild. It needed tools for its farms. Its economy was broken. Its infrastructure was damaged. Many places in the north were completely destroyed by the retreating German army. People were facing starvation. This is where the United States came in. The U.S. had programs to help countries after the war. These were not military loans, mostly. For Finland, it was about survival. The U.S. provided aid. This aid was crucial for Finland. It helped keep people alive. It helped them start to rebuild their lives. Now, when we talk about Finland's WWII debt to the USA, it's a bit complicated. It wasn't just one big loan at one specific time for war materials during the fighting. The biggest part of this debt was actually for post-war reconstruction and for critical supplies like food. The U.S. lent money to Finland for these things. It also supplied goods under the Lend-Lease program. The Lend-Lease was mainly for allies, but Finland received some aid after the war, converted into a loan. This was about helping Finland get back on its feet. It wasn't about tanks or fighter planes for its war effort against the Soviets. A big chunk of the debt, often discussed, actually dated back even further. It was from World War I. Yes, WWII. In 1919, Finland, a newly independent country, took out a loan from the U.S. government. This was for food and other supplies. It was a separate debt, but it became linked in people's minds. It showed Finland's long history of borrowing from the US for basic needs. This older loan was also part of what Finland kept paying. It wasn't just WWII debt, but the post-WWII aid added to it significantly. The US provided credits and surplus goods to Finland. These were for reconstruction. They were for things like buying agricultural products. They were for machinery. They were for materials to rebuild roads and bridges. These were not small amounts for a small nation. The total debt was around $8 million from the WWII era, and then more for the post-WWII aid. For Finland, at that time, this was a lot of money. The Finnish market was weak. The economy was shattered, every dollar mattered. Other European countries also owed money to the US from these programs. Many countries had their debts forgiven. Some simply defaulted on them. The war had ravaged most of Europe. Their economies were in ruins. They couldn't pay. So the US understood this. It often wrote off these debts. It was part of the huge effort to rebuild Europe. This was what most people expected to happen. They expected Finland's debt to be forgiven too, but Finland was different. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't default. It chose to pay. And this choice started a long process. The payments weren't huge sums all at once. They were regular, smaller payments. They were spread out over many decades. It was a commitment. It was a promise, and Finland stuck to it. The aid received from the US after World War II was critical. It helped Finland survive. It helped the Finnish people get food. It helped them start rebuilding their homes and towns. It was a lifeline. Without it, Finland's situation would have been even more desperate. The country was also paying huge war reparations to the Soviet Union at the same time. These Soviet reparations were a massive drain on Finland's economy. They forced Finland to industrialize fast. They forced it to produce goods for the Soviets. So, taking on another debt, even from a friendly nation like the US, was a big deal. It was a heavy burden. But Finland took it on. It made a choice, and that choice would define its financial relationship with the US for a long time. It wasn't just about money. It was about trust. It was about honor. It was about how Finland wanted to present itself to the world. It wanted to be seen as a reliable nation, a nation that kept its word, even when things were incredibly hard. That was the core of it. This is where Finland's story really stands out. Most countries that owed the US money after World War II either couldn't pay or had their debts forgiven. But Finland did something different. Finland paid its debt, all of it, every single penny. This makes Finland almost unique in the world. It's a remarkable story of national character. Why did Finland pay when others did not? There were a few big reasons. One reason was deep in the Finnish culture. It's that concept of sisu again. It means having grit, determination, and strength of will. It means facing huge odds and never giving up. For Finns, it also means keeping your word. It means having integrity. The idea of not paying a debt, especially to a friendly nation that helped them in their time of need, went against this deeply held belief. The Finnish people felt a strong sense of national honor. They felt it was their duty to pay back what they owed. It was a matter of pride. Another reason was strategic. Finland was right next door to the Soviet Union. The Soviets were powerful. They had a strong influence over Finland's politics and foreign policy. Finland had to navigate this carefully. It needed to stay neutral. It needed to show the world, especially the West, that it was an independent and reliable country. By paying its debt to the US, Finland sent a clear message. It showed it was a responsible nation. It showed it could be trusted. This was important for maintaining good relations with the US. Good relations with the US offered a counterbalance to the Soviet influence. It gave Finland some international standing. It helped Finland keep its own way of life, even under the shadow of the Soviet Union. The payments weren't made all at once. They were made over many decades. The debt from the WWII era and the post-WWII aid were combined. The payments were structured, they were small sums, paid regularly. This made it manageable for Finland, even with its struggling economy. Every year, a payment was made. Every year, Finland showed its commitment. It wasn't easy. Finland was also paying huge war reparations to the Soviet Union at the same time. So the country was stretched thin. But it kept paying. What did the US do with these payments? This is an interesting part of the story. The money Finland sent to the US was not just absorbed into the general US budget. Often, the funds were used for specific programs. A famous example is the Fulbright program. This program sends students and scholars to study abroad. It promotes cultural exchange. So, the money Finland paid back often came back in a different form. It supported educational and cultural ties between Finland and the US. This made the payments feel less like a burden and more like an investment in friendship and understanding. It created a positive cycle. Finland paid its debt, and that money helped build stronger bridges between the two countries. It benefited both sides in a way. The payments continued year after year, through good times and bad, or through the Cold War, through different US presidents and Finnish leaders. The commitment never wavered. It became a well-known fact in international circles. Finland always pays its debts. This became a kind of saying. It built a strong reputation for the country. It showed remarkable long-term vision and consistency. The final payment on this debt wasn't made until 1976. Yes, it took decades. From 1919 and then the post-WWII agreements right up to the mid-1970s. This was a very long time. It meant several generations of Finns contributed to paying off these loans. It shows the deep, lasting commitment the nation made. This was not a quick fix. This was a promise kept over half a century. It truly set Finland apart, and it built a foundation of trust and respect with the United States that endures to this day. The decision to pay was a defining moment for Finland. It shaped its image on the world stage. It reinforced its own sense of national identity. It was an act of integrity that few other nations matched. Finland's decision to pay off its entire debt to the USA had a huge impact. It really mattered for both countries. For Finland, it cemented its image on the world stage. It showed Finland as a nation of integrity. It showed that Finns kept their promises. This reputation for honesty and reliability was very important, especially during the Cold War. Finland needed to stay neutral during the Cold War. It was a small country. It was stuck between the powerful Soviet Union and the West. It couldn't afford to be seen as unreliable by anyone. Paying its debts in full helped Finland keep its reputation clean. It showed the West, especially the USA, that Finland was a trustworthy partner. This helped Finland maintain its independence. It helped Finland secure its unique position of neutrality. It showed that Finland was not just a satellite of the Soviet Union. It had its own policies, it had its own values. The act of paying also strengthened ties with the US. It built a special bond. The US admired Finland's dedication. This created goodwill. It fostered a unique relationship between the two nations. This relationship was based on mutual respect. It wasn't just about politics. It was about a shared understanding of values like honesty and keeping one's word. This goodwill was a real asset for Finland. It opened doors. It created opportunities for cultural and economic exchange. And there's a symbolic side to it too. The Finnish debt became almost legendary. It was a story people told. It was an example cited in discussions about international finance. It showed that, yes, sometimes debts are paid. This made Finland a positive example. It was often mentioned when other nations were discussing their own financial obligations. It was a source of national pride for Finns. It reflected their sisu, their stubborn refusal to give up or take the easy way out. It became a part of their national identity. For the USA, Finland's payments were a bright spot. Most other countries had their debts forgiven, or they simply didn't pay. So Finland was the exception. This made the US appreciate Finland even more. It reinforced the idea that some nations truly value their commitments. The money itself wasn't huge for the US, but the principle was enormous. The fact that the money often went to things like the Fulbright program was also good. It meant the payments were used for something positive. They built understanding. They built connections. This made the debt a win-win in a way. The final payment happened in 1976. It marked the end of a long journey. It was a quiet end to a very public commitment. For decades, the US Treasury would receive a payment from Finland, and for decades, Finland honored that commitment. When that last payment was made, it closed a chapter, but the legacy continued. The story of Finland's debt payment became a permanent part of its history. It became a testament to its national character. Even today, people talk about it. When you discuss Finland on the world stage, this story often comes up. It defines a certain image of Finland. An image of resilience, an image of integrity. It's a powerful message about responsibility. It shows that even a small country facing immense challenges can uphold its principles. It proves that honesty in international dealings is possible. It can lead to long-term trust and respect. The impact of this act went far beyond the money. It shaped perceptions. It built relationships. It told a story of a nation that valued its word above all else, and that story continues to resonate even many years after the final payment was made. It's a reminder of a time when actions spoke louder than words, and a promise made was a promise kept, no matter the cost or the time it took. So, did Finland pay off its entire WWII debt to the USA? Yes. The clear answer is yes. Finland stands as a remarkable exception. It paid back every penny it owed. This includes the older WWII era debt and the crucial post-WII aid. This aid helped Finland survive and rebuild. Finland's decision to pay was unique. Most other nations either defaulted or had their debts forgiven, but Finland chose a different path. This choice came from a mix of things. It came from the Finnish national character, that famous sisu. It meant a deep sense of honor and a refusal to back down from a commitment. Finns believed in keeping their word. It was a matter of national pride, but it was also a smart move for Finland. The country was in a very tricky spot after the war. It was right next to the powerful Soviet Union. Finland needed to maintain its independence. It needed to show the world, especially the West, that it was a reliable and trustworthy nation. Paying its debt in full helped build that trust with the US. It strengthened Finland's international standing. It helped Finland navigate the Cold War as a neutral nation. The payments continued for decades. The final payment was made in 1976. This was a long journey. It showed incredible long-term commitment. And the money wasn't just swallowed up. Often, it funded programs like the Fulbright Exchange. These programs helped build cultural and educational ties between Finland and the US. It created a positive outcome for both sides. The legacy of this act is huge. It gave Finland a reputation for integrity. It made Finland a symbol of financial responsibility. It created a special bond of trust and respect with the United States. This bond still matters today. It shows that a nation's actions can speak volumes. They can shape its identity on the world stage. Finland's story is a powerful reminder. It shows that even small nations facing immense hardship can uphold their values. They can honor their promises. It's a story of resilience, integrity, and strategic thinking. It's a testament to the Finnish spirit. They needed help, they got it, and they paid it back. Simply and directly. That's the honest truth of it, and that's why this story still matters. It shows how a nation can define itself through its actions, building trust and respect that lasts for generations.